I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Tish Calamer and I'm Community Engagement Manager at the Gale Borden Public Library. Welcome to all of our fine veterans. We thank you for your service and we thank you for being here this evening. Veterans Voices is a program that placed veterans in local schools so that children could learn the meaning of service and the meaning of Veterans Day. Obviously, because of the strange times we live in now in the pandemic, we can't go into the schools, but we hope that this panel discussion is still a means to share in our veteran stories and to honor them with what they did. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to have everybody introduce themselves. Steve Knight, why don't we start with you?
Oh, okay.
Tell us your name, branch of service, years of service, your rank.
Steve Knight, of course. I was in the United States Navy from 1970 until 78, into 78. Was a radioman, second class.
Okay, wonderful. Dina, what about you?
I was also in the United States Navy, the world's finest Navy, by the way. I was a reservist from 2002 to 2010, and I held the rank of Petty Officer First Class, and I was an intelligence officer.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, how about you? Introduce yourself.
Jerry Cousert, I was in the Army. I was in for 2 years, and I made it to the rank of Specialist 5.
Okay, wonderful. Bob, what about you?
Sorry you don't have my photograph, but I was in the United States Army, Airborne Infantry, served from 1961 until 1985. I retired as a major and was in the best light infantry unit of the United States Army, the 173rd Airborne.
Wonderful. Okay, Tom, what about you? Introduce yourself.
My name is Tom Lauterbach. I was in the United States Air Force from 67 through 71. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 67 through the officer training school and got out as a captain.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Brian Hoeg, who actually is one of our Gale Borden employees and a vet.
Good evening, everyone. Brian Hoeg. I was in the Navy from 86 to 91 during the first Persian Gulf Desert Storm and served aboard the USS Kitty Hawk.
Which we see in the background, I believe.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. Okay, now I'd like to ask you all, why did you join the service? How did you join? What led to your decision, whether it was your decision or not? Let's start with Tom.
To be candid, as so many of us remember, there was something called the draft hanging over our heads. I was in graduate school and I never was actually 1A. I rode my student deferment into joining the Air Force and applied for officer training school and was accepted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Steve, what about you? How did you?
Basically the same as Tom. The draft was in full force when I was in. It was coming up towards its end, but yeah, I was drafted in the next to the last lottery. Drafted number 66 out of 250 some odd they were taking that year. So a buddy
Steve,
of mine and I were working for the city of Irving at the time. I'm sorry, Tush, what?
I'm sorry, I interrupted, but can you explain what the lottery was?
The lottery was just simply a method of taking your birth date and throwing it in a big bucket. 365 days out of every year, they throw in a big bucket, start drawing numbers until they draw out 254. If your birth date got there or was pulled, then depending on what number it was pulled, that's when you had to report. It's kind of like, I don't know, winning the lottery.
So a low number most likely drafted then, right?
So anyway, a buddy of mine and I were working together for the city of Irving at the time. We both looked at each other and says, nope, we're not going, because his number was 33 and mine was 66. So we just said, okay.
I joined after September 11th, actually. So my story was definitely serving for a higher purpose, for love of country, while after we were attacked. I'll never, I mean, nobody that, you know, of our generation forgot how they felt on that day, or, you know, where they were, right? It's definitely a story to be told and very personal to each individual, but I just remember feeling helpless and useless, right? And I knew I had something to offer. I definitely wasn't going to be kicking in any doors, you know, or jumping out of helicopters or airplanes. But I knew there was something I could offer to the fight. And so I did my research, and the Navy had the best educational program and boot camp program. So there I went, off I went.
Thank you. Bob, what about you? How did you join?
Used to be a television program on TV when I was a kid about West Point. So I went to get see if I could get an appointment, and I did. I was in the class of 65 at West Point, New York, United States Military Academy. Unfortunately, the only thing that they had there while I was there was a degree in engineering. I am in no way, shape, or form an engineer. I can't do mathematics for the life of me, and I was failing both in my mathematics and language classes. I'm equally bad in language. So what I did is I got out of West Point. I resigned, went to Loyola University in Chicago, joined the ROTC, went through that program, was able to graduate a semester early, and outranked everyone in the class of 65.
Oh, that's great. Jerry, what about you? How did you join?
Well, I had a kind of a busy month of June in 1968 because the three things happened. One thing was that I graduated from college on the 9th of June, got married on the 16th of June, and got my draft notice on the 21st of June. So it kind of quickly went from school to the Army. And another thing about draft is that I made some money. They talk about a lottery. We had a lottery, and I actually my number ended up to be 347. Unfortunate thing was that we did the drawing while I was in Vietnam. So it was too late. That's about all.
Brian, what about you?
My story is a little unique in the fact that I kind of did things backwards. I went to college, graduated with a degree in business marketing, and was trying to find a job in the Midwest in 1986. And the economy was bad. It was the years of Reaganomics. Ronald Reagan was the president and our commander-in-chief. And the one positive thing was Ronald Reagan wanted a 600-ship Navy. So I looked at the Navy. I'd always been interested in the Navy. I came from family. My dad was in the Army. My brother was in the Air Force. And I wanted to get into an officer candidacy program. So took a test, qualified very high to go to officer school. Went and was told I had about a 6-month waiting period before I could get to officer candidate school because a lot of people were doing the same thing as I was. So a real slick speaking recruiter said, hey, I got a great deal for you. If I put you in as enlisted, I can probably get you into some other officer programs once you're already in as enlisted. So I didn't know any better at the time and went in as enlisted. Of course, having a college degree, I did go in as a E3, which is two ranks higher than what you normally go in as. So I had a little bit of an edge on some of the other people I went to boot camp with. And then basically when I qualified for my job qualification as an enlisted man, was basically told I could do any job that I wanted. And at the time, again, computers were just starting to take off. So I went as a data processing technician. So I worked on computers in the Navy, and that's how I got my background that I'm still doing today.
Yeah, in your case, that definitely led to your present career, your present position.
Absolutely.
Did I miss anybody, or we got everybody how you joined? Okay. What sorts of jobs or duties did you have while you were in the service? Did any of you have special training, and is it training that you use today that led to something, a career? Let's start with Jerry. We'll mix it up a little bit.
When I went in, as I said before, I was drafted, and they wanted me to go to officers training because I had a college degree as well, but I did not take that. I ended up in the infantry, and I ended up going to Vietnam as an infantryman, 71 Bravo. But luckily, because I had a college degree and because I knew how to type, they made me a company clerk. And that's kind of what I stayed doing the whole time I was in Vietnam. And also, when I got out of Vietnam, I went to the stateside duty, and I was also a company clerk in that job.
What's your typing speed?
At the time, it was really good. My typing speed was around 95 words a minute, something like that.
Not too shabby.
You know? Now the kids can do it with their thumbs that fast.
Tom, what about you? Did you have any specific duties or special duties, special training?
I was very fortunate that I got to gain experience in what I would be doing in civilian life. I started out as an administration officer in SAC headquarters, the late great Strategic Air Command, and then moved on to a SAC base as a base information officer, so PR guy, if you will, and the writing skills that I helped hone in the administration function and all the PR activity helped me prepare for my later career. Fortunate.
That's great. Steve, what about you?
Nothing really special. I mean, when I joined, went through boot camp and got an A school right out of boot camp for radio communications, and spent 12 weeks learning to type, but I already knew how. So by the time I got out of there, I was already up to speed. I guess the typing was the biggest thing though, because they gave you 12 weeks to learn how to type. And I already knew how to type when I went in. So, I mean, that was one of the things my mother insisted on. One of my happiest semesters in high school was typing class.
Typing and keyboarding is so important.
Yeah, well, I was the only guy in the class back in the day. So I was in a classroom of women or girls back in the day. So yeah, I had my pick. But yeah.
Tina, what about you? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's fine. That was fun.
Tina, what about you?
So I guess piggybacking off of typing, right, as a skill set itself, I think one of the things in intelligence that we learned to do as well was to write, an analysis, right? So not just typing, but being able to take the thoughts and what you see and what you've read and putting it into a coherent summary or presentation and delivering that to leadership, senior decision makers, so they could make a decision, moving forward. I use that every day, including writing just as something as simple as writing an email to a colleague or a friend, right? My favorite saying is, words mean things. They always mean things, whether you say them, whether you type them, whether you read them, but being very thoughtful about what those words mean and who you're speaking or sending them to.
So really critical thinking skills is what you learned.
Yeah, I guess, thank you. You summarized that very well. Clearly I'm a little rusty maybe, I don't know.
Okay, what about you? What kind of, what were some of your duties? What did you do in the service?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Bob?
Okay. One of the times that I went to Vietnam, I was a senior advisor to a Vietnamese infantry battalion. That, along with having an opportunity to go to Hong Kong, Australia, and across Europe, taught me how to work with people of all different nationalities and all different backgrounds. In Vietnam, what I was able to do is to work with our unit to develop homes for their families and for the men and women or the men that were in the military. And they didn't have homes over there. And many places I don't think they have. It was usually just one shack that had no floor. It was just dirt, maybe a door in one room. What we did is we were able to get them a 4-room home where they and their family could live. And we put in a little bit of a run down the middle in between the homes so they could have a way to get their waste out when they went to the bathroom. Other than that, they had to go to the bathroom outside with their feet on the rails of the railroad trains and hunker down and go to the bathroom that way. So when I left, they gave me a honor medal first class for giving homes to the troops and to their families. When I was in Wildflecken, there was no Flecken like Wildflecken. It was a training area in Germany. I was chief of logistics. I had 400 Germans working for me, and I had all the responsibilities of logistics for a post. That taught me how to do all sorts of multiple things to be able to control people, or not control people, have people work together in a joint effort. Was the commissary, the food service, all the quarters for the officers. So it was kind of an interesting job, taught me how to do a lot of diverse things at one time. I think that's enough.
Okay, thank you. Did I get everybody? One thing about the Zoom environment is you're not always sure where you started and where you left off. So please forgive me if I misstep, but just raise your hand and rein me in. We're ready for our next. Yes.
I touched a little bit on before, Tish, but specifically, I think one of the things I think everybody that's here that I'm hearing a lot of the same thing, and as you put so eloquently, the critical life skills. I think I want to add to that. I mean, each of us learned a specialty job to do something within the military, but the one thing that's across the board is respect. You learn how to respect others. Each of us had a very small space that we lived in. And we had to respect other people around us, and other people respected us, and it was a completely different way. And realizing, some of these guys that had the Vietnam experience were literally, putting their lives into the hands of other people. I didn't have that situation in what I did, but I know just these guys, I've seen some of their names and some things before from the library, but certainly respect them for serving. And I think that's one of the biggest things you learn. And I guess, excuse me, you say special training, that's part of the whole military, is to teach you that respect.
Actually, that leads to a question that I want to ask next, which is, what were some of the intangible things that you learned? How did your military service shape you, shape your character? How did it influence you? We talked about kind of the hard skills. What were some of the, the mental or emotional things that you learned? Let's start with Tom.
I think the most valuable thing I learned was how much can be done in 5, 10, 15 minutes. I remember in officer training school, we'd be out on the drill pad and in one uniform, and we would be ordered to march back to the barracks, change our uniforms, come back in another uniform, and it was going to happen in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it was. And first few times I just thought, there's no way that can happen. But you know what? We did it. We learned how to do it, and now I think that's taught me a valuable life lesson. The other thing was, of course, getting along with people from all over the world, people that were in different services, and tried my best to get along with them.
Can you get dressed really fast now?
I'm sorry?
Can you get dressed really fast now, Tom, since you learned how to get dressed in 5, 10, 15 minutes?
Takes me an hour and a half now. I'm
Well,
old.
nobody said you had to do it now, so. Okay, Steve, what about you? What were some of the intangible things that you learned?
Geez, Tom stole a lot of my thunder, and just learning how to respect others more than anything.
Mhm.
You know, teach you a sense of responsibility as well, how to look after your stuff instead of depending on mom and dad to do it for you. Taking care of things, others around you, looking after the people that are next to you. Man, I made a lot of friends at the time that I never kept up with and wished I had, but we all went our separate ways eventually. It's yeah, it changes you completely, really. It teaches you how to do things that you never thought you would be able to do before. And it gives you a lot of self-respect and a lot of confidence in yourself as well.
Thank you. Jerry, what about you? What did you learn that was more on the intangible side?
When I initially left for Vietnam, the service was one part of it, but Vietnam was really the part where I had to learn how to deal with all different types of people, different places that they're from, different educations, and you had to know how to, as a company clerk, you had to know how to deal with these individuals, and in order to get things done. And I think that was invaluable to me, because I went into retail and business management, and the same thing there. You have to know how to work with each individual person to get the most out of them, and that's really what I think I learned while I was in Vietnam and in the service and Fort Eustis. I was in Virginia for a while, and the same thing there.
Okay. Dina, what about you? What did you learn?
I think hands down, I learned the value of strong leadership. So in one word, leadership, right? With the military, rank matters, right? You do what your senior says, right? You follow orders. And those orders are usually given, right, for the safety of you, your team, your crew, your ship, whatnot, right? But there's leaders that can give orders and people have to follow the orders, right? Because that's the military structure, you follow orders. But there's leaders that can get people to act and follow their orders because they really want to follow that person. They trust, they would do that for that person even if there wasn't rank, right? And that, I think, is special with leadership today. Just being able, my dog confirms, just being able to it when you see it, because there's good leadership and there's bad leadership, and you need to experience both to see the good leadership. And then what I've done with that personally is I have pursued and followed good leaders, and I've asked them, can you still lead me, right? I seek out strong leadership, and I think that's really helped me along the way.
So who's the alpha dog in your house? Is it you or the dog?
I just work here. Okay. I just work here.
So the strong leader is the dog. Yeah, I would say that happens with animals, the animals we love. Okay, Bob, how about you? What did you learn in the service that was more intangible?
Okay.
We're getting some great answers.
You'll probably cut this one out. One of the most difficult things about the military that I was in was the death. Infantry, during TETA 68, my NCO and I had to drive through the town to get to our unit. There's bodies laying everywhere. It was just horrible. Scared to death. He and I took care of each other. There was 2 of us and 400 Vietnamese. 400 Vietnamese worked and supported us, but they really didn't look at us as the same as them. And obviously the 2 of us didn't look at them as the same as us. So he and I had to take care of each other in this group of 402. And my second tour with the 173rd Airborne, my friend in the unit was a brigade surgeon. He was responsible for all of the medics within the unit. And one day, there was a group of them playing volleyball outside of the area where they served and took care of the wounded. And a couple of mortars came in and killed about 8 of them. I lose a little bit with this. He and I sat down in the bar that night in the officers' club. I got him so drunk he couldn't walk. But I had to do that. And I learned that in situations you have to work with people, no matter what the situation is, and support each other. And that has helped me out tremendously in my work life, because I learned that there are times when you just can't do anything else but help the person out and make them feel better. Sometimes booze is the only way.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's very, obviously had a huge impact on you, and no, it's.
You see somebody that gets hit. When I was had a company-sized task force. We were going to send them out on patrol. A couple of guys, about 6 guys, and they're sitting on the sidelines. And they're 18, 19, 20 years old. And with a hand grenade, you can pull the pin on the hand grenade. If you hold the lever down, it won't go off. You can put the pin back in, and everything's fine. Of course, you got to hold that pin down. And one of the guys was holding that grenade. He was showing off to the others. He said, "Watch this, I'm going to take the pin out." And then he went to put the pin back in, and the damn thing went off. Well, we had 2 guys we had to medevac out. And we had to get everybody slowed down and relaxed. Obviously, we didn't send the patrol out that night, sent out another group. But you learn that you got to really be compassionate with one another. And it might just be an automobile accident that you're dealing with somebody, or a kid who gets in a bicycle accident, or it doesn't have to be death, but my God, when you're dealing with death, it really trains you.
Mm. Because of your experience, I think I would like to think that you prevented so many other people from having to experience that same thing. And I think that's the nature of your service. You're serving so that the ultimate goal is that nobody else has to. You're fighting so that at some point nobody needs to fight. So
scary part, do you mind if I just add that?
I'm sorry, what?
Scary part, before I went to Vietnam and when I was in college, there were occasions when I would go out in the morning and demonstrate against the Vietnam War, and then in the afternoon put on my uniform and go over to the location where we practice drill and whatever at Loyola in Chicago. We didn't have to fight the Vietnam War. The only reason that we got into the Vietnam War, Ho Chi Minh worked with our officers and men on the sidelines when we were fighting Japan. All the Vietnamese, when the French left, the Vietnamese were all against the Japanese. A lot of people don't know this. When we came back and we won the war and we formed the United Nations, the country of Vietnam was given back to the French, along with the other countries that were in that area. And there was battles and fights. The Brits were fighting their colonies and the French were fighting their colonies. If we would let those people go on free, today you can see the Vietnamese are working with us. It's a very good country that we can work with and support. The Vietnamese people that I dealt with when I was in that unit were fantastic people, supporting one another, helping one another out. They were good people. And I don't think that we ever needed to have that. But unfortunately, when the French lost and we go in there and we support them, they divided the country in half. Just everything went wrong. If they would have been allowed to be free, they may or may not have went communist, but sometimes you wonder if communism isn't the worst thing in the world. Sometimes that might be a good option to have in some country.
Mm. Yeah, I honestly don't know how to answer that, but it just sounds like decisions that are made in one decade still have ramifications today. You're fighting a war based on decisions that were made, 10, 20 years earlier. World War II was fought because World War I didn't fix anything. 20 years later, we were in a new war.
Got to look at history and let history learn from history so you don't do the same thing again.
Right. Well, let's move on to maybe something with maybe some more pleasant associations. I would just like to ask, did any of you make any good friends in the service? Are these people that you still talk to, that you still have in your life, or have they just left a huge impact on you? Let's start with Jerry.
There's only one person that I was close friends with. I was a company clerk. He was the radio man, a radio sergeant, and we became good friends. And I have visited him. He lives in Portland, Maine. I have visited him at his home, and really good friends, good people. But that's really the only one. The rest they were good friends while I was there. We supported one another, worked with one another. But then when you got out, you kind of went your own way and didn't see him anymore, except for one person.
Dina, what about you? Any special people that you met?
I met a lot of special people. I think that they were all special in their own ways, except for the drill instructor that made me drive in front of the hole. That was a moment. But even then, I think he was, if I saw him today, we'd raise a glass. I think that one of the coolest things about the friends I made, and I know some of the gentlemen here have touched on it a little bit, is that they were all different, different walks of life, different, North, South, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Muslim, Christian, Catholic, you name it. Like we were a fighting force from all walks of life, and you train together, you learn how to be in the military together, you go to war together. A lot of what Bob touched on happens together. You come home, you grieve together, and we're still together, right? So I feel like I haven't had one friend that stuck with me. I've had hundreds. And even tonight, I actually double booked myself. I should be down at my local VFW. I'm the financial officer there, and I have a bunch of friends that are looking at their watches like, where is she? I still have friends.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you joined us tonight. So.
Yeah, no, we're all friends here.
Brian, what do you think? Any friends that you still keep in contact with, or people that really had a huge impact?
Social media contacts, found a few people I served with, that are on social media, and kind of stay in contact with that. But I think, some of the best friends that I have currently now, though, are other people that have served. It's interesting, You
didn't serve together, but you served.
Right. This sort of thing, you see somebody wearing a ball cap, with the name of their ship on it, or, 1st Infantry Division, or, yeah, exactly. I was going to say, Steve wears his hat at the library, and I stop and I talk at him, and you can strike up a conversation with another vet. It's real easy. So I think that fraternity that we have is not just who we served with initially, but, the whole group of everybody that we served with, that we have that in common.
And is that intergenerational too? You find that you can talk to younger vets, older vets?
Yes, I think absolutely. Yeah. I think, one of the sad, things with our aging vets from World War II, that a lot of them are gone, and now we're losing Korean War vets. We're losing Vietnam, vets, and we're losing people to PTSD every day. Suicide among veterans is out of control, and it's a very serious issue that, I volunteer part of my time, helping with the crisis helpline for veterans. But,
Thank you.
one of the things that, I've also done is, I have a profound interest in the history of the USS Indianapolis. And that's a whole other story that, at least I know all these Navy vets know the whole story. And if everybody's ever seen Jaws, they know the story of the Indianapolis from Robert Shaw. But anyway, those vets, I've reached out to them and had conversations with them, as well as World War II, Army, Marine Corps, whatever. So definitely intergenerational and, across the board.
Tom, what about you? Friendships?
I'm blessed by being in touch with several people that I served with, but I'll tell you one quick story. I had checked into Carswell Air Force Base, went to the housing office, and I had enough seniority that I knew I wouldn't have to stay in the bachelor officer quarters. So I started asking around for a place to live. And frankly, I asked where the parties were. And the guy at the housing office told me, he says, "This is the place, you'll love it." Okay, I'm on my way. So I rent my apartment and get set to move my stuff in, get all set. And I noticed the name tag on the apartment next door, the Reverend Joseph A. Lugo. I thought, no, this is a joke. Bottom line, Catholic chaplain. We'd become very good friends. He married me the first time around, and we talk about once a week now. So I'm blessed.
You thought he was going to maybe put the kibosh on your partying, though.
Yes.
Well, a lifelong friend. That's a pretty good trade-off then. Steve, what about you?
Most of the people that I served with aren't around anymore. I mean, I tried to keep in touch with a couple of them. I think the one that I probably kept in touch with the longest was my communications officer when I was on board ship. He and I became pretty close. And we spent a little time together. We talked over the phone a few times, and that was about it, that we never did get back together. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore either. So, but very short. I would love to keep track with him, but I spend most of my time now down at the American Legion Hall. So I still got a lot of new friends down there, and a lot of friends at the library too, Brian. Thank you.
Bob, what about you? Any friends that, any friendships that still lasted, or people that you'll always remember?
There's people I'll always remember, but you move around too much, and you don't end up staying in one place to be able to develop something that lasts forever. But the one thing that we're lucky, the 173rd developed an association. So we've got a nationwide association and a large group of guys here in the Chicago area that have served in the 173rd in the Vietnam War. And we get together, and we were all in the same place doing basically the same thing. And it's a lot of fun just to sit there. We have our memorials for those who have died, and we have our parties for those who have loved, and just have a good time being together.
That's great. Okay, moving on to maybe something a little bit on a lighter note. Does anybody have any funny or unusual stories from your time in the service? And just raise your hand and I'll call on you, Bob or Jerry, just yell out. Yes, Tom.
I have one I think is pretty funny. I was dating a nurse in Riverside, California. I was in SAC headquarters in Omaha at the time, and I would volunteer to fly top secret courier to get out of the office and to see my friend out in Riverside. So I was always the junior courier. The senior courier was usually a captain. And we flew out to 15th Air Force in Riverside, California. and met my friend, and she said, let's go to Disneyland. So we took off for Disneyland, and my friend, who had been a pilot, kept checking with base ops to see when the flight was scheduled to leave to go back to Omaha. I said, nope, no flight plan yet. And it's getting to be a long time after the original estimation. So finally we go rolling up. I get out of the car, kiss my friend goodbye, and the captain and I get in the aircraft, and we are met with daggers from especially the senior people on the plane. I sit down next to a full colonel, and to rub salt in the wounds, as a courier, I got a steak and a baked potato and a vegetable and all the trimmings. He got a bologna sandwich and an apple. And he glared at me the entire trip back to Omaha.
Anybody else? Funny stories, unusual stories?
I have one story that
Bob, okay.
it's pretty quick. It was when I was in advanced training. I was in Fort Hoeg, California, and they would take us out to our training sites on trucks, but then you had to run back. And sometimes it was 3, 4, 5 miles back from the training site back to your where you were staying. And what made it even worse than that is that many of the times you had to run on the beach, and they tried to run in sand with combat boots and full gear for a couple of miles is really tough. So I decided I was going to figure out a way out of that. So I found out that they had a battalion football team, and I joined the battalion football team, and they would come and pick the football players up and bring them back on the trucks, so we didn't have to run back anymore. So figured out a way to save myself a lot of running into sand.
I think you're a problem solver, Bob.
But that was Jerry. That was Jerry.
Oh, that's Jerry, I'm sorry.
That's all
Jerry,
right.
you're definitely a problem solver.
You can't see either one of us, so.
Right, yeah, I both of your frames lit up, so I'm sorry. That was Jerry, the problem solver.
They're both in special operations. They can't be seen, so.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely have that logistical mindset.
Got another one from the background? Bob,
Okay, now this is Bob, okay.
Okay. Very interesting. You learn how to eat different things, different meals, different preparations when you're in a foreign country, and when you're in a place like Vietnam, it's truly different than what we're used to here. So when I was leaving the Dai Huy, that's captain, his last name was Nam, Dai Huy Nam, had a little party, and he was saying goodbye, and I was sitting there, and it brought out this bird's head. It was a pigeon, and they put it down in front of me, and I looked over at the Dai Huy, and I said, Dai Huy, what do I do with this? And he says, well, it's really a delicacy. What you do is you suck the brains out through the eyes. I said, what? He said, suck the brains out through the eyes. I said, I can't do this. You're going to have to do this one for me. So he went ahead, and he had the enjoyment of having that delicacy.
Anybody else have interesting food experiences, as long as we're on the topic? No?
I think just a generalization. I've been out now for almost 30 years, and I still eat fast. I still can't slow myself down because I ate so fast in boot camp because you had like 5 minutes to eat.
Oh,
And I still can't slow myself down 30 years later. So
wow. Anybody else have that?
Wait, so to piggyback on that, Brian, though, also in boot camp, you only got 3 square meals, right? And it's like now, when I get an urge for a snack, I'm like, how did I ever survive boot camp? Because there was no snacking. You just got 3 meals. So it was like, I couldn't imagine doing that again. I love food way, way too much.
Now you can snack. Well, to round out the evening, I would like to ask everybody, what does it mean to serve your country, and what does Veterans Day mean to you? So let's start with Jerry.
Veterans Day recognizes all of those who have served in the military whether it was overseas or stateside, doesn't make any difference. The recognition is for their patriotism, their love of country, and willingness to sacrifice, even if it means their life. All this to protect the freedom of our country. When I was drafted, many citizens were against the war in Vietnam and would do anything they could to avoid serving, including leaving the country. Many went to Canada. I was not sure about the decision. I kind of felt like Bob, in that I could see protesting because I didn't agree with what they were doing. But I was sure that if I was drafted, that I was going to serve my country to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Jerry.
That's fine.
Okay, let's go over to Steve. Your thoughts on Veterans Day and service?
Well, the service was basically up to me. I mean, I did it for love of country more than anything. Two, I wasn't anywhere near ready to try and avoid a draft for any reason. I didn't really think about Vietnam or going to Vietnam all that much. It was just a duty I had to serve my country. I spent 4 years, my first enlistment, re-enlisted for an additional 4 because I didn't feel like I'd done enough yet. And I was having way too much fun. So, but Veterans Day, it's just a day we honor all the people that spent their lives or a portion of their lives defending their country, standing for freedom, allowing others to have the freedoms that they don't have to worry about fighting for because others did it for them.
Thank you. Tom, what are your thoughts? Tom?
Who's calling? I firmly believe that everyone should do something. Many people are not cut out for the military or belong to a religious group that doesn't allow them to go into the military. I understand that. They can work in a hospital, they can work in some government bureaucracy somewhere, but everybody should have to give 2 years, 4 years, whatever we decide, at frankly lower wages than they think they're worth. And as far as what Veterans Day means, the rallying cry for me is we don't know them all, but we owe them all. And so many have served, but yet we're 7% of the population, which I still can't get my arms around because it seems like when I went in, everybody was going in. But 7% of us supposedly have worn uniforms, and that seems awfully low.
Dina, what are your thoughts?
I actually really resonate with what Tom just said, especially about, you don't have to serve the military to serve your country. It's just, you really don't, and Veterans Day is great, right? It gives us veterans a day to go around and fist bump each other and high five each other, and I think it is important. After Vietnam, we didn't treat our vets real well. And I think that the country in many ways has corrected that course. And I'm glad that they have. But if I'm being very honest, I find Veterans Day kind of awkward for me because a bunch of people say, hey, happy Veterans Day, and it's like, well, thank you for your service. And I always struggle with how to respond to that because I'm not a better person because I served my country. I'm no better than the American that sits next to me, right? I just made different choices and, maybe the stakes were a little bit higher for me at different times, right? But I think that the key point is what Tom said. You don't have to be in the military to serve your country. Go out there and do what you love. If you want to go save the animals of this nation, you go out there and you save the animals. If your cause is racial justice, then you go out there and you fight for racial justice, and people that's the beautiful thing about freedom. We can do and pick what we love and follow that passion. And I was just very lucky enough to follow that passion while wearing that uniform. And I'm going to tear up here and flying that flag. It's great. Amazing.
Thank you. And thank you for your honesty too. Bob, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Okay, I never was really any patriotic duty that I had to go in the military. I enjoyed it. It was a thing my family did. My dad was in the Philippines during World War II. I had an uncle who went into the second day at D-Day, and two cousins Korean War. Family did this sort of thing, so it was no big thing. Biggest thing was, for me, a 9/11 veteran. I was running for a political office, and somewhere he heard that I was in the military, and he came over to me, and it was the first person that ever said, "Thank you for your service." And I said, "Oh shit, that's really nice." And I mean, it just made me feel good. I don't know, you serve your country just like Tom said, and everybody should do that 2 years, no matter how you do it. And that would be a very good thing.
Brian, I think you're left.
Yeah, I think it's,
Your thoughts
I think for me, you know, I think my life would have turned out, you know, completely different had I not gone in and served. You know, I learned an awful lot about my profession. You know, that's how I got started in computers. I learned, you know, a lot about leadership that a lot of these people have said, you know, not only how to be a leader, but how you don't want to end up, because you see people that, you know, as Dina said, you know, you see somebody that's not too good at it, that you say, okay, I don't want to do that myself. So I think, you know, it's humbling to have somebody say thank you for your service, because, you know, it was my privilege, and that's generally my answer, you know, is if someone says thank you for your service, it was my privilege, because it was. And I think, you know, I would do it again in a heartbeat, you know, if I was, you know, 75 pounds lighter and, you know, 30 years younger. I mean, in a second, I would definitely do it. But, you know, and I agree with what these guys are saying too. I think, you know, everybody should serve something, you know, military or find a cause or something to do, because I think there's a lot of us that are better off because we did make the choices that we did to serve. And those that have served in other things, whether it's a mission trip or, you know, whatever it is, I think are better off too.
Yeah, certainly just the act of serving is I think a powerful tool for, you know, any country, any society. So, well, on that note, I'd like to thank all of you for participating. I think it turned into a wonderful, candid, honest conversation. And I thank you all for sharing the funny as well as the more painful moments. And you might all think it's a cliche, but as somebody who did not serve and would not be, you know, a prime physical specimen for serving, I do thank you for your service, because you all have done something that the rest of us, we didn't do. We made other choices, as Dina said, but we are forever thankful that because you all made the choice you did, the rest of us do have choices. And, you know, thank you for pointing out that service is important, whether it's military or not. I think that's a valuable lesson for everybody to learn. But again, thank you very much for sharing your time, sharing your stories, sharing who you are. And, you know, we really appreciate that. And I just want to say what you did is definitely appreciated. You made a contribution, you've made a difference. So, thank you and good evening.
Thanks.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Tish Calamer, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Gale Borden Public Library. Welcome to our Veterans Voices 2020 panel discussion. As everyone is aware, the pandemic really changed how we do things. This is a program that originally placed veterans in classrooms to interact with students and to share their personal experiences and, more importantly, what service means to them and what Veterans Day means to them. So we're going to go ahead and get started and ask some questions. But first, I would like each veteran to introduce themselves. So we're going to start with my right, which would be Robert Brado. So go ahead, your name, branch of service, years of service, your rank.
My name is Robert Brado. I was in the Army, 1st Cavalry Division, 5th of the 7th, which was Custer's Cav. I was in from 1967 to 1969 and came back combat infantry sergeant.
Okay, and next, going around my invisible table, Frenchick.
Hi, I'm Hannah Frenchick. I spent 8 years in the Army. I started as patient administration, so working in the hospitals, and then I transitioned over to public affairs, so doing photojournalism, and I got out at 8 years as a specialist.
Thank you. And next, we have Wes Scott.
I am Wes Scott, Army, still serving, wrapping up my career hopefully at the end of this year with almost 35 years of service.
Wonderful. Okay, and next we have Steve Knight.
I am Steve Knight. I spent 8 years in the Navy from 70 to 79. I was a radio in 2nd class in charge of communications, and I also attended Special Weapons and Warfare Group in Coronado, California.
Thank you. And then we have our other Steve, Steve Weber.
Hi, Steve Weber here. Active duty United States Air Force, 74 through 78, still serving in the Air Force as a volunteer through the organization known as Civil Air Patrol.
And you are wearing uniform, I understand, of the Civil Air Patrol?
I am wearing the uniform as the what we call our dang it, you caught me.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
When do you think of
we
it?
have actually 2 uniforms. We have one that's still the Air Force style uniform for those that meet the height and weight requirements, and then we have this uniform here for us with a little more girth to us.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. And then we have Sergio Rodriguez.
Hello, yes, Sergio Rodriguez. I was in the United States Marine Corps, served from 99 to 2003, and I reached the rank of sergeant in about a little bit over 3 years.
Wonderful, okay. So we'll go ahead and get started with the discussion. We'll start with just what sorts of jobs or duties did you have in the service? Did you have to have special training? Where did you serve? Did you get to see the world? So just tell us a little bit about what you actually did on kind of a daily basis. We'll go ahead and get started with Hannah.
Yeah, so as patient administration, like I said, is how I first started in the military. So I did all of the paperwork in hospitals, whether it's admissions and dispositions, medical records. There were air evacs. So at Walter Reed, we had air evacs where we would have injured service members coming over from Germany that we would be responsible for their tracking and everything on their flight from Germany to Walter Reed and where they went within the hospital. And then when I transitioned to public affairs, that was probably my favorite job I had, was photojournalism. So being able to go out with the different units and really get to experience everything that the Army has to offer rather than just my one job. So I went out with a lot of like tinker units and different units. That was really fun, getting to see what they did and telling their stories. And I think that was like why I enjoyed that so much, was getting to tell everyone what people in the military were actually doing. And then kind of, you mentioned like the travel side of it. I think my favorite place I was ever stationed was Germany, because I got to travel all over and really get to experience the world when I was 20 years old, which not a lot of people get to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly not 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve Weber, how about you?
Well, I had 4 years of electronics training in high school. So once I went in, they said, what do you want to do in electronics? You can pick whatever you want. And I just basically told them whatever you want. So they put me into avionic electronics. So I was working on the navigational systems on fighter aircraft, bomber aircraft, and refueling tankers, which got me around because of the type of aircraft and missions that the Air Force had at the time.
Okay. Wes Scott, how about you? What sorts of jobs have you had? I know you're still active.
Well, the interesting thing about my career is I actually started out as a private E1. So I went through basic training and went to the engineer school, finished college in the military, and then was able to earn a medical degree in the military. Some of my jobs, I've jumped out of airplanes. I served in a Special Forces 18 for about 10 years. When I finally got a chance to play doctor, if you will, worked at Walter Reed. I heard Hannah mention Walter Reed. I worked there. I was a commander for a hospital in Germany. And then when I returned to the States, I was commandant at a couple of special training schools. And then my last assignments, I've been working out of Washington, so spending time at the Pentagon and at the White House.
And you are modest because what is your actual rank?
I'm a general.
You are a general, yes. No, you're quite the success story, and Elgin is very proud of you. So we're very glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
And we understand you're not in Elgin right now, so you are.
I am not.
Actively being active.
Right.
So we won't ask anything more. It might be sensitive. Okay, thank you. Let's see, Sergio.
Yes, I went to 29 Palms in California, the Mojave Desert, where I went to my MOS school, where I did small systems computer specialist. My first duty station was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where I was there about 2.5 years. And that was more like a help desk support role where I started. We supported the entire base. And it got me an opportunity to get in front of generals and sergeant majors because we were the ones that supported them. Then my next duty station was Okinawa, Japan. And that actually was probably the best time that I had because we were part of the Fleet Marine Force. I was attached to the 4th Marine Regiment, the oldest and proudest, where we supported infantry units. At that time, I was more of like a field comm guy where we would go out to deploy the fields. We would support the infantry units with data communication, radio communications, both normal networks and secret networks. So it was pretty fun.
We all know how lost we are without our IT guys. But communication and communication systems are certainly, a part of military history, even from, ancient times. You can't deliver your orders and you can't accept your orders if there's no communication. So I think it's a wonderful, branch of the service. Robert Brado, how about you? What was what were your duties?
Well, my MOS came up, dental technician. I don't know how that came up. But after about 12 hours, President Johnson felt that all orders should be changed and everyone went into 11 Bravo, which is combat infantry. So I ended up in Vietnam and a couple of my duties were plastic explosives expert, which I took some training in, and then I was on a machine gun squad for our unit in 1st Cavalry. And we spent 6 months along the Laotian mountains and Laotian border, and then 6 months along the Cambodian border.
And I believe Steve Knight, you're next, last but not least.
Well, I started mine out in San Diego through boot camp, of course, and then stayed on for A school, radio communications. Left there and went to San Miguel Naval Communication Station in the Philippines, 15 months, sending message traffic back and forth to 7th Air Force and the 7th Fleet. Left there, went back to California, and spent the next 2 years in the Naval Amphibious Group, Coronado, where we did all kinds of fun stuff. Re-enlisted on the advice of my captain and the promise of a $10,000 VRB, and that kind of convinced me. And then went to Naval Air Station in Texas, where I spent the next year, had my first son, and then I left there and went to Hawaii, where I got stationed permanently aboard a ship that was decommissioned a year later and transferred to dry dock in in California, Alameda, California. That was about it for me, other than, 4 Westpacks, an Indian Ocean, Sea of Ocas, and the South African cruise. That was it.
So
Fun
we can
time.
already see quite a variety of experience. Just
Oh, and I don't know if this will help, but my last duty station was an auxiliary oiler, and that was just one of the pictures taken of us. We're the ones underwater there, if you can see it. I don't know if you can see it very well or not, but the one underwater.
back just a little bit. Oh, there you go.
This guy is us right here. And what we really looked like was this guy. That's what you'd normally see.
Okay.
At sea. I don't know if that's probably pretty glary there, it looks like.
Tilt it down just a little bit, and I think that'll get rid of the glare.
Does that help?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay, that's what we normally
Okay.
look like when we weren't in rough seas and full of gas. That was it. After that, I left there and came back home.
Wonderful. So next I want to ask, how did being in the military influence you or change you or mold your character? Did it affect your future career plans? Let's start with Sergio.
Well, I mean, service to me, the reason I joined the Marine Corps really is because I had a really influential teacher in high school who was a Marine. He was a helicopter pilot. And I really had no plans on what to do. I came from a very low income household and didn't really have plans for college because there was no money for college. But I knew I wanted to get out of where I grew up in Carpentersville. I knew the world was bigger. So I joined the Marine Corps because of my teacher, because I figured if I was going to go into the branches, I was going to go to the best one, in my opinion, you know? So, so I left, and it changed, actually. It did a lot for me. It made me learn that anything was possible. Work hard, and I was able to achieve great things. I received 2 meritorious promotions in the 4 year that I was in. That's why I reached the rank of sergeant in about 3 years. I received 2 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals in the 4 year that I was in. And it just taught me, because not only did I serve in the Marine Corps, I also found time to volunteer. Every year since 1999, and still today, I volunteer every year for Toys for Tots. Every year, I still volunteer for organizations. I'm the board president for a local organization here in Elgin, Centro de Información. I've been volunteering for them for about 9 years, and I've been on the board for 3 years. And service just means a lot. You know, like, I joined the Marine Corps to serve my country because this country afforded me opportunities that I couldn't get back where my parents' country, back in Mexico. So I felt like it was my duty to serve. And when I got out, I felt like I didn't no longer serve my country, but I wanted to serve my community. So that's why I've been very involved in the community, both with where I work. I work for a not-for-profit financial institution, KCD Credit Union, which, you know, does great things for people. And I still find time, like with the MLK committee for the city of Elgin. And I still serve like with volunteer and board stuff. I just think it's something important, and it just helps being a contributing member of society. And I think that's very important for all of us to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we definitely see that desire to serve with all of you still, not just during your service. So, okay, next, let's go down to Steve Weber. How did the
going in
influence you?
First off, I knew I couldn't afford college, and I knew my parents couldn't afford college. But secondly, Robert and Steve will know my draft number was 55. So I figured, hey, I want to go on my terms, not on Uncle Sam's terms. So went in with the enlistment. What I really picked up out of the most was being stationed overseas, which really gives you a big appreciation of what we have here in the US. So many people take so much of that for granted until you go overseas and find out things that you don't have over there, that we just figured that's how everything is. So it really gave me a great appreciation for this country, what we have to offer. And when my daughter wanted to go as an exchange student to Germany, I didn't bat an eye, because I knew that she's going to learn things there that you cannot learn in any school, be it high school or college.
Okay, next, let's go over to Steve Knight.
Okay, well, mine was very much like Steve's was. My draft number was a little bit lower than his, however, it was 33. And, yeah, my best friend at the time, he and I were both the same age. We both graduated high school the same year, and we were both working for the city of Irving, trying to raise enough money to go to college, and his draft number was 66. So we both decided, hey, he called me up, says, let's go into the Air Force. I said, no, not going to do it. I can't fly. No matter how hard I flap my arms, I just can't fly. I said, I'm personally going to join the Navy. He says, but why? Your ship could get blown up. I said, so I can tread water a lot longer than I can tread air. So we joined the Navy together on a delayed enlistment program. That was in November of 1970. And the rest is pretty much history. But that was the main motivation for joining the military. But after I joined, I found out that it taught me a lot. It taught me discipline. It gave me a lot of life experiences that I would never have had otherwise. I got to see places that most people in this country don't ever see and never will see, some of them. But it was a lot of fun for me. A lot of hard work too. And it taught me the value of hard work and what it can get you. And it helped my family sleep a little better at nights. Knowing they were safe at home, it helped me sleep a little better at night. So that was my main motivation. That's kind of what it taught me, was the value of your time. Use it wisely. Don't waste it. Cherish every moment you can, because life is short.
Okay, let's move to Wes Scott. So you're still on active duty. So obviously your military service has influenced you and continues to influence you.
Believe it or not, I joined for some of the same reasons other folks said. Wasn't drafted, but definitely was looking for a way to do something to better myself. And at the time, they were offering a great GI Bill and says, hey, if you join for 3 years, you can go to college for free. That sounded like a good idea. And that was all I really wanted, was the chance to go to college. But as it turned out, once I got in the military, I was like, this isn't that bad. And I did get a chance to travel and see the world, did get a chance to do things. And I know this may sound corny, but it was the first time I didn't feel marginalized in what was going on around me. So the military gave me opportunities that I didn't see outside of the military.
I don't think that's corny. I think that's important.
Yeah. Things are a little better now and a little different now, but over the years that's evolved. But that's why I joined the military. And through time, I became very appreciative of the service that we do, what that how that matters to everyone, in America. And as they say, freedom isn't free. And so I was glad to pay whatever I needed to pay to keep others free and safe.
Thank you. Hannah, what about you? In what ways did your service shape you, influence you?
So I think my story is a little bit different. I grew up as an Army brat, so being around the military for me was a normal thing. I wasn't doing very well in high school. I lived in San Diego, so I was probably having a little too much fun going to the beach rather than doing my homework. So I wasn't ready for college, and I knew my parents weren't going to let me just sit on their couch. So I decided to go into the Army, following my dad's footsteps. And his father's, like, we have military history all the way through the Revolutionary War. So it's kind of been just a thing in our family. And I figured, like, why not? I'll just go in for a couple years and get my college paid for, because I wasn't ready, and I knew I wasn't ready. So it kind of helped me learn patience. I think in the military, you have a lot of hurry up and wait. So you learn to become a very patient person. It definitely taught me, like, to be more motivated and how to be more self-motivated, which I think is important, especially in the world we live in today. You kind of have to be able to motivate yourself with everything that's going on with COVID-19, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And I think it definitely helped me to just understand people and the world a little bit more. I was very lucky that I've lived all over the place and lived around so many different types of people. And I think that just kind of helped me continue to, like, grow as a person and to see the world for what it is and not have, like, those rose-colored glasses on.
You mentioned that you were an Army brat. Were there some things about your Army experience that helped you maybe understand your parents a little better? Were there times when you were growing up that you thought, well, I don't get this. Why are we doing this? Why do we move around?
Yeah, so my dad is actually intelligence. So every day when I was little, I'd ask my dad, like, what'd you do at work today? And he would tell me he'd have to cut off my head and scoop out my brains if he told me. So I kind of, like, him and I think had, like, a better relationship. as I was in the military, because when he was deployed, there were things he would tell me that he would be like, but don't tell your mom. So I think we had that like a better relationship because of that, because like I could understand like certain things that he was like going through or certain things that had happened, and it wouldn't worry me. Whereas if he would have told my mom some of those things, she probably would have like lost her mind. So I think that definitely helped.
Yeah, that's great. Robert, did we get you or no? I don't
No,
know this question
no.
yet. Yeah, I'm just going around the circle.
I had a very interesting way to get into the service. I had been married for about a year, and I was I wanted to get done with my college education, and I knew that because there was a draft at that time that the Army was close to drafting me, so I went to Glenview Naval Air Station and wanted to join Navy Air and be in avionics because I had a 2-year associate degree in electrical engineering. And so I took all the tests, and they were going to give me OJT right at Glenview Naval Air Station, and my wife and I would be able to live right there. And they just didn't have any openings. So I kept going back every other weekend and talking to the commander, but nothing came of it. And then my draft notice came, said goodbye to my wife. And I went in on a Friday, and on Monday, the commander called my wife and said, send him right down. We've got an opening in avionics, and I'm gonna put him right to work. And she said, well, he's gone. Can you get him back? He says, sorry, once he's gone, he's gone. So I ended up, of course, in the Army instead of Navy Air, which I was really looking forward to spending 4 years doing that. But the one thing I did learn as a combat infantry person is perseverance, because I wanted to get back home to my family. I wanted to get back home to my wife. And it made me very aware of everything around me, what my duties were, what my job was, to perform to the utmost of my ability and my excellence so that I would be able to get back. So it taught me perseverance. When I got back, I was able to go back to school on the GI Bill and get my degree in electrical engineering and biomedical engineering. And then what it also taught me was mentoring. I've been mentoring veterans. I've been mentoring high school students for many years, and mentoring young men. And so I feel that what it taught me would be what it was as a sergeant, was to, shepherd younger people, to guide and direct them. So.
Let's move on to talking about what maybe some of your most memorable experiences were, whether it was an incident or two, a moment or two, or if it was an overall period in your service. But what were some of the memorable standout experiences for you? And let's start with Wes Scott.
For me, I'd have to say being in Germany when the Berlin Wall came down, just being there and experiencing that environment and that time. Things changed in Germany overnight once the division between East and West Germany went away. But just to get a chance to see people who had this expectation of a different life finally get a chance to experience that, that was phenomenal and something that I won't forget.
Were you in the crowds when the wall was actually being torn down, or?
Well, I was one of the ones standing back trying to keep people from getting crushed by the wall. But
oh, so you really saw it firsthand.
Close and personal. So,
yeah, amazing. Okay, Steve Weber, what about you? What were some memorable moments for you, or things that you won't forget?
Probably the TD White at Italy, Aviano, Italy. Since there was no housing on base for us, we had to walk into the town and stay at the local hotels. But walking back and forth, we had the challenge of walking by the local Communist Party headquarters there in Italy. And you know, we were under strict orders not to say anything, or we couldn't do, we just walk by and don't do anything. And yeah, we got jeered every time walking by, didn't matter which way, which direction. So that too kind of falls into what I was mentioning earlier, to you know, appreciate what we have here in the US, because it's not like that throughout the world. Things that we have the rights to do, you don't necessarily have the same thing in other countries. They have different laws.
Yep. Okay, Sergio, what about you? What were some memorable experiences for you?
I think I gotta say, living in Japan for a year, I thought that was pretty cool to be able to experience a different culture. I really immersed myself in the nature, and being in Okinawa, it's like a tropical island, you know? So it's a very small island with beautiful beaches. I got to do a lot of scuba diving out there, and I did a lot of kayaking. Got to go to Sapporo, which is in northern Japan, which is a big metropolitan city, and got to witness a winter festival that they had there, where like they would close on their street and have ice sculptures the size of buildings. So it was pretty cool just to experience that. And it was because I was there for an army exercise that I was able to go to that festival. So it was just a great time being in Japan. I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Robert, what about you? What were some experiences?
Mine was memorable, but I won't say it was a good memory. When we got off the plane, or as it was landing, as we were coming home, we call it the Freedomburg. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone was absolutely excited to get home on US soil. And I have to say that everyone that was on that plane was a patriot, loved this country. And we got down the ramp, got onto the tarmac and kissed the concrete. And as we were walking, picking up our duffel bags and walking along this tall fence to go through customs to get on a bus to take us to a warehouse somewhere in Oakland, there was a lot of protesters of the war. People called us every name you can ever think of. They spit on us, threw blood on us. And that was our welcome home. That's what I remember. And it took a while for us to understand it was against the government at that time and not us, but we were getting the blunt of that. And so that's my memory of serving, even though we were patriots and we were serving our country. And I'm a patriot today, and I'll serve this country however I can. But that's the most memorable memory that I have. That.
Do you think nowadays veterans are treated better, or did it take years to sort of reconcile those memories for you? Or
I think veterans are treated so much different today. And I think it has to do with 9/11 and a lot of the things afterwards, where now there's so many things for Vietnam veterans and other veterans to say, welcome home, thank you, which for the Vietnam veteran means everything in the world to hear someone say, welcome home. And we want to thank you. That kind of erases everything. It doesn't erase the memory, but it erases the feeling that that we are now back in, let's say, the fold of all the other military people that have done great things also. And so the memory is still there, but the feelings are gone.
Thank you so much for sharing that powerful moment. I'm so happy that you feel that you've been welcomed back, and we certainly say welcome home and thank you for your service, to you and to everyone who has served. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Hannah.
Wow, to follow that one up. I think my most memorable memory was I got to live out my childhood dream, because when we lived in Alaska when I was little, I love the Chinook helicopters with the 2 propellers on top. They had skis on them in Alaska. I just thought they were so cool. And when I was stationed at Fort Lewis, I had said something about that to one of my bosses, and we were going out to cover stories with another unit, and they were already out there. So we actually took a Chinook out to they dropped us off in Yakima, and she told the pilot about how that was my favorite helicopter as a kid. So they let me sit in the suicide seat. I had the headphones on, I got to see everything. And so for me, it was getting to live out my childhood dream of admiring those helicopters and just thinking they were so cool, and actually being able to not just ride in one, but to sit up there with the crew and listen to everything and have them talk to me and ask me questions and get to see it. I felt like I was 7 years old again.
Wonderful. Steve Knight, what about you?
Every minute I was in was enjoyable and memorable. You're sitting here listening to everybody else, and I'm thinking through of everything I did in the 8 years that I was in, and it's like, geez, there's so much. Where do you start? Because I literally enjoyed every day that I was there, with the exception of a few, that is. But for the majority, it was all great. One of the biggest things I think, though, was our trip across the equator. Of course, everybody getting initiated into the Shellback Club, and which is only something the Navy guys know about. Well, maybe some of the Marines too, if they were on board ship long enough.
Can you tell us what that is?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us what that is?
Shellback initiation, that's just a big traditional initiation that most sailors go through when they cross the equator for the first time. You go,
okay.
You go from a pollywog to a shellback, is what they call you.
Oh.
Polywogs are the lowest form of life on the planet, and shellbacks are somewhat up there. So
a step above.
Yeah, a step above.
What does it have to do with the equator? Is that just such an unusual experience that it's marked?
No, it's rare that the Navy visits both hemispheres in one vessel.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that was kind of the deal. You crossed the hemisphere into the southern hemisphere, and I literally went from Perth Amboy on that equator crossing. We went all the way down to Perth Amboy in Australia, which way down there. And we were the first naval warship to have visited that since the beginning of World War II. So that was quite an experience. We were 10 days there for R&R and invited into people's homes to stay with them for the 10 days we were there. They just laid out the whole big spread, the whole city. We basically got the key to the city, do whatever we want, and spend very little doing it, which was kind of cool. But no, it was the whole time was an experience. It's really hard to explain. It's hard to go through everything because we experienced so much in that 8 years that it's just mind-boggling, really.
Thank you. So now let's
go for an hour, but I won't.
And with Zoom, I'm always afraid I'm stepping on somebody's sentences or interrupting. So I want to make sure that everybody says what they want to say. So now let's talk about any friends that you might have made in the service. Are you still friends with some people? Do you remain in contact, or are they people that you spent a lot of time with and then you've gradually, drifted apart? What were your friendships like? Let's start with Sergio.
I still keep in contact with some of my friends in the unit that I was in when I was in Okinawa, Japan, because that was the last year that I was in. And anytime they're in town, they'll stop by, and I've done the same thing. If I'm in the state that they live in, we'll stop by and see each other for a drink or a meal. And every once in a while we do talk, but it's just you build, it's like a family really, you know, because you work with them every day, but not only that, you live with them, you live in the barracks with them. So you're spending your entire time with them. So it's like your extended family. And yeah, you build lifelong relationships, definitely.
Steve Weber, what about you?
I really did not. Unless from watching the other career guys, yeah, some of them may have ran into another person when they were stationed somewhere else, but with the constant changing with me, I didn't spend more than nine months at one location. So you really didn't get a good chance to get buddies with anybody. So it's okay. I can do, do it on.
Are you finding that out of the service or out of active duty, you're connecting more with veterans, other veterans, even if you might not have served with them?
Myself?
Yeah, because you mentioned you volunteer still and you're still involved.
Right, with the Civil Air Patrol, yeah, obviously we have people that were ex-military, and we do things such as what we're doing right now, get together and talk our experiences and how they can benefit people in that. So, here we have veterans from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Marines. Now we have, we need to find somebody from the Coast Guard.
Yes, we do.
Branch. And now there's the new Space Force. So there's another branch of the service now. So, but I have respect for every veteran. And Sir General, I respect the fact that you're still serving. Thank you for that. And Robert, I am very sorry to hear that you were treated the way you did when you came back. I know exactly what you're talking about. And all we can do is hang together and help one another out.
So true.
Okay, Steve Knight, what about you? Any long-term friendships, or what were your friends like when you were in the service?
Yeah, I've just got one long-term friend from the military. It's the same guy that I joined with 8 years before, but he and I keep in touch, still keep in touch to this day. We've just been lifetime friends, but as far as most everybody else, not really. Most of them are people that I meet nowadays, volunteering, and as you know, I spend a lot of time at the library. So, and this little guy goes with me up there too. Matter of fact, I was in there the other day, and one of the ladies asked me who I was, and I told her. She said, "Oh, I didn't recognize you without the hat." So, and it's somebody I see every day, so
yeah,
you recognize that.
And I'm sure when you recognize each other's hats, or you see another hat worn by a veteran, there's that instant camaraderie.
Right, and it is, and it's like Brian said Thursday, I think it was. It's you make all kinds of new friends every day. I mean, I never knew Brian until I started volunteering at the library. Found out he was in the military. He's in the Navy actually, so that helped.
Yeah, that instant connection.
I think General Scott I've met once before.
2 times actually.
I think I met you out at the cemetery for a memorial service out there one day.
Correct.
Yep, and I appreciate your service, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. And
Okay,
the
let's
other 3 here I haven't met before except Robert. I think I met Robert once before, briefly. We talked once briefly, Robert. Yeah, but I meet new people every day. Sergio's a new guy. I haven't met Sergio before. Hannah, like to spend some time with you, girl. And Steve, if you ever bring your head down out of the clouds, come see me.
Okay, let's move on to Wes Scott. What about your friends from the service? And of course, you're still active. So, are there people that you've hung on to for years, or are you seeing that you just keep constantly meeting new people and that camaraderie is there?
Well, I think that definitely continually meeting new people. I agree that when you run into another vet somewhere, you instantly have that bond and you kind of click because of that. There's a couple of folks that through the years we keep crossing paths and we've stayed in touch. And the interesting thing is, even if we don't see each other for several years, the moment we're reunited, it's just like it was yesterday. And we spend a lot of time saying, remember the time you did such and such? So we have a lot of those stories.
It's wonderful. Hannah, what about you? Are you still in touch with people, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me growing up around the military, I moved every like year and a half to 2 years myself. So I grew up learning to make connections quickly. So
Mhm.
every place I went, like I always made those connections with people. When I went to Germany, within my first 2 weeks, I met my best friend Brittany, and we were in orientation together, and I was like, oh, she looks like a terrible person. And then we had made mutual friends who introduced us to each other. She told me she liked my hair, and after that, like, we were inseparable, and we are still like best friends. Next year it'll be 15 years since we met in Germany, and our plan was to go to Germany to like go back to where we met and like go travel together. He has a son who's 12 now, and he's like my kid. Like, we are like inseparable. Even though we don't live near each other, we see each other like multiple times a year and are very involved with each other's like families. Like, we are like stuck together. She's always said that no matter like who any of us end up with, whether we're married or anything, she was like, we always come first for each other. Like, that's it.
So she really turned out to be a sister
Yeah,
to you. Yeah.
absolutely. And she even tells her kids, she's like, well, I've known Hannah longer than I've known you. So she kind of, she trumps you.
Good to know that.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert, what about you? Any lifelong friends, or did you all drift apart, or what are your?
You know, in the beginning, after getting home, a lot of us kind of just hid in a cave for a while. But there were a few of us that my best friends from Vietnam. One of them didn't make it back, but the others we kept in good contact, close contact until he passed away last year. But I think, like a lot of people have said, once I see someone, a veteran, whether they've got a hat on or a jacket or something, they're like blood brothers and sisters. I mean, they're, it's the band of brothers. I talk about that in the short stories I write. But we're all a band of brothers and sisters who, have gone through a lot of the same things. So it's whenever I meet somebody on the street, they're like a friend right away.
I think that's so amazing that, that bond exists and you recognize each other by your markings, your caps, your jackets. And then we have that shared experience, even though that experience could be so varied. But you can instantly bond with somebody. I think that's a gift. That's really a gift. So let's move along. Do you have any funny or unusual stories from your time in the service? And I won't go around to hit everybody because you might not have a story that's funny or unusual. So just raise your hand if there's a funny or unusual story you'd like to tell. Okay, Robert, go ahead.
One day we were, of course, in the jungle. It was a triple canopy jungle. And we thought they were orangutans flying through, screaming, screeching through the trees. Woke us up at night. We thought we were getting overrun. And they looked like orangutans flying through the jungle. And after we got settled down, we figured they were orangutans or some kind of monkeys or whatever. So in the last couple of years, I've talked to a few people from Vietnam, and they said, yeah, we've seen some of those. And so we started doing some research on the internet and found out they were rock apes. Now, rock apes are about 5 or 6 feet high, kind of a tan, and very strong, because there's no orangutans indigenous to Vietnam. So we found out that they're rock apes, and you don't see them very often. But quite interesting if anyone wants to look that up. Rock apes of Vietnam, you'll find some incredible stories about seeing those animals.
And they're only in Vietnam, nowhere else in the world?
Vietnam and Laotian Mountains, borders
so that part of the world,
Laos and Vietnam.
Wow. That would certainly be a memorable instance to rock apes. Okay. Anybody have an interesting or funny or unusual story to share?
I think when had just changed to public affairs, my mom and my parents live in the DC area. My mom and I were at the Iwo Jima Memorial, and there was this older man there. He was by himself. It was like December. It was cold, so we started talking to him, and he was actually public affairs during World War II, and he actually filmed at Iwo Jima during World War II, and he was there to meet a reporter who was going to do a story on him. So I just thought, for me, going into the public affairs field and meeting this man who actually like filmed at Iwo Jima, like when he was there, was just, it felt like it was kind of like a full circle moment. Like, it was so cool.
Thank you. That would definitely be amazing and memorable. Any other stories? Otherwise, we'll move on to our last question. Okay, to cap things off, I would like to ask, to you, what does it mean to serve your country? What does Veterans Day mean to you? So what does service mean? So we'll end on a philosophic note. Let's start with Wes Scott.
Somehow I knew you were going to do that.
I was looking straight at you. Yeah, I'm trying to change up the order of who goes first.
That's absolutely fine. You know, for me, when I think of service, it is a general term. It just means that you're willing to sacrifice whatever you have for someone else. And I think military service is just that. It's sacrificing potentially your life for the safety and security of somebody else. And I think that's the highest calling that any of us can have, to accept that and to be willing to do that, particularly those who volunteer to do that. You know, getting drafted is one thing, but volunteering and choosing to continue to serve is another thing entirely. And so, you know, if I can be a little bit more philosophical, you know, the Bible in John 3:16 talks about no greater love. And I think military service is much like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Steve Weber, your thoughts on service and what Veterans Day means and what your service means.
I think General Scott brought up a very good point, is that freedom isn't free. The things that we can do in this country, you can't necessarily do in other countries. And there's a cost for that. There's a price for that. And it's not necessarily a dollar type value. And I think all of us have looked at that, and you don't have to be in the military to serve your fellow man. I'm a retired firefighter. We have police officers, we have doctors. There's a whole slew of people that even to this day with the pandemic going on, that are putting their lives on the line, not necessarily dodging bullets and bombs and that, but germs and things like that. So I think we all have an obligation to help serve our fellow man in whatever way we can. And in my case, that was the two, the military and firefighting. So
thank you for both kinds of service. So I do see this desire to serve in each and every one of you, and all the veterans that I've met during the Veterans Voices experiences over the years, is, you know, that desire to still give back continues outside of your years of service. Sergio, what about you? What are your thoughts on service, and what does Veterans Day mean to you, and what does it mean to serve our country?
So yeah, I mean, just like I said, you know, being from a family of immigrants, being able to give back to a country that afforded me opportunities that I know I couldn't do in my parents' home country, and just being able to serve a cause greater than yourself, you know, just like everybody else here has said, it's just something that had a profound impact on my life. And that's something I continue to this day, because I feel like it's something to give back and to help not only, you know, the country, but also my community. And I just feel like with Veterans Days, a lot of our veterans, as you found out today and you've mentioned, is we still continue to serve. And like you said, just yesterday I was at the library and I opened the door for somebody and he saw my license plate. It's got a Marine Corps plate. He's like, you had to be a Marine. And I was like, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, you know? But it's just funny. And it's just, I've seen veterans and I always stop by and I say something. And like, even though Marines tend to have a chip on their shoulder, I love it, when I see Navy or Army, it's all in good fun. I think that we all know what it means to serve. We've all had maybe different experiences, but we know that we would do anything for our brothers and sisters in arms as well as our country.
Thank you. Steve Knight, what about you? What are your thoughts?
It's kind of hard, but I mean, General Scott pretty much put it pretty well. It's all about Veterans Day is all about those that have served and given their all for their country that they love. And I think I pretty much explained why I thought it was the right thing to do, because one, it helped me to sleep better knowing I was protecting my family and home. And hopefully it helped my family sleep better knowing that I was protecting them. So, and
you're one who continues to serve. You're involved in so many different things in the community.
Yeah, really, too many actually. About three things going on right as we speak. So, but I love it. Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. Wouldn't have it any other way.
So much. That's
right.
Great.
And anybody that thinks that the military is not their cup of tea, you never really know until you try it. Yeah, I mean, there's so much the military can teach you and give to you, and you're returning to your country at the same time. So it helps.
Thank you. Hannah, what about you? What are your thoughts on service, and especially since it's a family tradition?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think like with Veterans Day especially, it's just like a time to reflect and to learn, because everyone here has gone through so many different experiences that I've never been through and that I don't know. But I think being able to reflect upon that and to learn, and I think it helps me just to understand like our country better and kind of where we're going and where we were. I think that's just really important to learn about those different stories and what other people have been through.
Thank you. Robert, we will end this question with you. What are your thoughts on service, and what does Veterans Day mean to you?
And like Sergio, my dad was an immigrant, and when he came here, he couldn't speak English. But when he taught my brother and I, that this is our country, he was an incredible patriot, because this was his country and his new country, and he loved this country. And when I went into the service, when I was going to go into the Navy or into the Army, he was proud of me. And to me, the flag symbolizes what we're all talking about, because it's a symbol of where our forefathers came from and what they had to go through. And I feel grateful that I live here. I feel grateful that I was able to serve, and I would do it again. And what it has taught me too, no matter what you go through, like Wes was saying, no matter what you go through, you always want to help those that are less fortunate, or those that need mentoring or coaching or guiding. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's in here, it's in my heart, that we just need to be open to everyone around us.
Thank you. I thought I was going to end simply by saying thank you all for your service, but what I really need to say is thank you for continuing to serve. You're continuing to serve your communities and our families and our students. And that's an amazing act of sacrifice in and of itself. You're taking your time. And I certainly appreciate you sharing your time today to talk about your experiences and your thoughts. And sometimes, we shared some funny stories, and then sometimes we shared some more painful moments. So I would like to thank Sergio Rodriguez, Steve Weber, Steve Knight, Wes Scott, Robert Brado, and Hannah Frenchick for participating in this panel. And again, thank you for your service and thank you for continuing to serve. And may we all observe Veterans Day and think about what service of any kind really means to ourselves and to our community and to our country. Thank you so much.